Welcome back to Retro Podcast. We have Tom, the Elton John impersonator. And Tom, tell me about how this idea began.
Well, I've been an Elton John fan for a long time, and I learned piano during lockdown with the aim of just getting good enough to play Elton's music, play and sing Elton's music live in concert. I was very inspired by my friendship with Elton's drummer, Elton's original and current drummer, Nigel Olsson, who was part of the three-piece band that Elton essentially conquered America with. Nigel and the late great Dee Murray and Elton were the three-piece original Elton John band. There's the famous scene in the Rocket Man movie where Elton plays his first gig in America and becomes a superstar overnight, and that's what happened in real life. So, sorry, excuse me. I wanted to recreate that. God, it's hay fever season here in the UK. I wanted to recreate that early Elton John sound, the sound of that original three-piece band. And I thought it would be a great time to do it because Elton retired last year. So this is like a passion project. I learned piano recently. I've really taken to it. And I've got a personal connection to Elton's music. So that's how the whole idea came about.
Very cool. And you do dress in costume like he does. He's very famous for wearing the glittery baseball outfit. Have you had the chance to wear a version of it?
I love the glittery baseball outfit that he made famous in 1975 at Dodger Stadium. And I also love when he played his final American concert at Dodger Stadium in 2022 as part of his farewell tour. He kind of recreated it and wore this like new version of it.
Mhm.
But I don't play in that. I'm gonna make something inspired by that, I think. But I don't want to just buy the jumpsuit. I think you can buy the jumpsuit or a replica of it off like Amazon for $15. And when you've seen, you know, people dressed in that costume on like a stag do, uh, at the airport or something, it kind of takes the cachet away from that outfit, even though it's probably the most iconic Elton John outfit of all
Yeah.
time. But that's why I haven't opted for that one immediately. It's just when you've seen people doing a beer funnel wearing that costume, it takes away from its sophistication somewhat.
Mhm. And I'm guessing you have seen Rocket Man.
I have. I watched it in the cinema after it came out, and yeah, it was very well done, and it definitely put Elton back in the spotlight.
And what did you think of? It's funny. All these years, I used to think it was. I used to think Taron Egerton's name was Egon. I keep thinking it was Egon, like the character from Ghostbusters. I don't know why, but me and my dad always thought his first name was Egon, but no, it's Taron. But what did you think of Taron Egerton's performance as the legend himself?
I thought he did a great job. And he seems like a very likable fellow, Taron. So yeah, I mean, an Elton John nerd like me is never going to be satisfied with a movie like Rocket Man, because it really, it wasn't particularly accurate, I think, a lot of the things in it, but it was still very well done. And I mean, it was a beautifully made movie. The scenes and the sets and everything were so wonderfully crafted.
Have you, by any chance, watched the Kingsman sequel where Elton John plays a version of himself in the movie?
I have watched that, yes.
I
I enjoyed
remember
that a lot.
I remember seeing that in the movie theater, in that first scene of Elton's appearance where the can't remember his name, but the guy with the robot arm comes in and says to him, "Play Crocodile Rock," and Elton is not happy, and he just says, "F you." He just screams that to the microphone.
Yeah, well, he's recreating probably many a real life tantrum in that movie, so he does it very convincing.
Well, he's not happy because Julie Moore kidnapped him and has him hostage playing music 24/7 with no sleeping time. Yeah. And speaking of Elton, I actually did a gift for him and his husband and family last year. It is a illustration because one of the things that I also do is freelance illustrate. And this was a Christmas illustration of sort of a
Oh,
Rankin and
wow.
Bass parody, like the stop motion Christmas animation parodies. But since you are an Elton impersonator, we're gonna have to make a sequel to add you next to Sir Elton John.
Oh, that would be an honor. That's a amazing illustration.
Yeah. And trying to figure out which character was gonna be which was difficult because we wanted to bring back George Michael because he collaborated with George Michael. So George Michael Santa. And then of course we have Dua Lipa in the background and she's supposed to be Heat Miser. Yeah. Have you met Sir Elton John?
Yes, I met him last year in March, and that was a great bucket list moment to be able to have a conversation with him, which mainly centered around sobriety. Um, and it was, yeah, it was brilliant to be able to tell him how much of an inspiration that he's been, and he's really one of the main keys to turning around my life. So I'm very grateful to him for that, and it was wonderful to be able to tell him that in person.
Very cool. And how old were you when you started doing piano lessons?
Well, I learned piano during the lockdown, so I was 30 years old when I started.
Got it. And
I'm 33 now.
when it comes to playing piano, because of course you're the Elton John impersonator. When it comes to playing piano, do you like have custom pianos, or are they the actual stage pianos, or are they like decorative pianos like what he does?
Um, I use mainly the pianos at each theatre that we play. So often they'll have a Yamaha grand piano or a Steinway grand piano. Elton plays a Yamaha. Certain tracks will trigger a MIDI in his piano. So, on Philadelphia Freedom, he'll use MIDIs to create that MIDI triggers to create that electronic piano sound for that particular track, or Daniel will have something similar. But where theatre doesn't have a grand piano for me to use, I'll bring a Roland keyboard and perhaps we'll use a shell with that, because it's the aesthetic as well as the sound of the grand piano is important. But most of the theatres that we play on this tour have a grand piano, so that's the way that we do things normally.
And this is just an idea, but one of Elton's big songs, "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road," an idea that you should do for your next show or a show down the road is you should have like a Wizard of Oz theme for a stage. You could have like the piano and like the green castle and a road, like could have like a Wizard of Oz theme for the song.
Well, that would be very cool. Yeah, we've not had too many elaborate stages so far. It's mainly just been the stage costume, the piano, and the band, and the music. I'd love to do some more elaborate stagings in the future. Although we do have some beautiful imagery. Whenever a venue has an LED screen, we do choose historic photos and rare archive photos that best represent each song. So we sometimes have a stronger visual element. But this tour, this Tom Zelton tribute tour, is very much a moment in time. We're doing 100 shows or so over the course of this tour. And I'm taking, going to see Elton over 50 times, being friends with Nigel Olsson, having studied his music endlessly. I'm condensing that into this celebration, this theatrical celebration. But it's not something that I'm going to be doing forever, because I've got other things that I'm working on, entrepreneurially and in terms of original music, and my podcast and other projects, and being a big Elton John fan, I think Elton would want his fans to do original things as well as being inspired and celebrating his music. So this is like, I've just always wanted to play his music live. I was fortunate to find the time to learn the piano during the lockdown. Um, And this is such a great way of connecting with Elton John fans and like-minded people who love his music. That's the point of doing this tour. So it's a moment in time. And I don't know how many plans I'm going to be able to make for the future with this show. I'm sure I'll always play Elton John's songs one way or another. Perhaps I'll do one or two Tom's Elton tribute shows per year. But the long and short of it is, I hope to connect with as many Elton John fans this year as possible, because this is going to be the year for as far as this show goes.
Mhm. Well, very cool. And recently there was an incident in the UK a few months back. In Glasgow, there was a Willy Wonka experience. Well, at least we thought it was an experience, but then it turned out to not be an experience, and it was just a warehouse with a few decorations, and it wasn't like appropriately advertised. It was a scam kind of event. Now, what was your reaction when you heard the news with this scam artist sort of event that happened?
I didn't hear about it. What happened?
You didn't?
No.
So in Glasgow, there was a group that put together an event called the Willy Wonka Experience. And in the brochure, I mean, even in the brochure, the pictures looked realistic. It looked like this was an actual event that they were putting on. But then, of course, when you get to the warehouse, it was only a few decorations. There wasn't candy. Like nothing was decorated. It wasn't promised as it was in the brochure. The brochure was it was an AI scam.
I mean, that's terrible.
It's very terrible. And I mean, since you didn't hear about it, I mean, now that you are hearing about it, what would your response be after hearing that?
I mean, I don't even know where to begin, really.
It was the same way.
It's terrible. I guess in the age of AI, there are going to be more scams and more things like that that are going to happen. It's going to be tricky to navigate the world as AI takes more and more of a hold. And I think it's very dangerous for creativity and creative arts, because we're just going to be regurgitating other people's work using AI.
Exactly. When I first heard about it on the news, I don't really pay attention to news very often, but when I heard about it, all I could think of was that scene from the SpongeBob episode where Mr. Krabs is coming up with Krabby Land, and when he pulls the curtain, it's basically a wasteland. That's what the way how the Willy Wonka experience was turned out. It was basically a wasteland, like the SpongeBob episode with Krabby Land.
Well, I'm fortunate to say that I never bought tickets to the Willy Wonka experience, so I wasn't one of the unfortunate people who was scammed. But
You're very lucky.
I'm very sorry for all of those people.
Yeah. I would show that to my dad. And someone even did make a SpongeBob parody, and I was showing the parody, and we were just both laughing. And I said to him, if that was me, I would want my money back right away.
Yeah, quite right.
And we are coming down to the end of the interview. And for people that want to go into creativity and impersonations, what is the best advice you would pass on to them?
I would say, I mean, in terms of being an impersonator, my 2 cents on it, as I told you, is that it's very healthy to be inspired by someone whose art, whose music, whatever you really admire, um, and do something that I'm doing for a year or two, or 3 or 4, whatever, a few years of playing covers. That's literally, the Rolling Stones came up doing covers, the Beatles came up doing covers, Elton came up doing covers. But I don't think you should devote the rest of your life to impersonation. Impersonation is and covering other people's songs is a wonderful stepping stone. And playing other people's work live is something that, as a long-standing tradition in the music industry. A lot of the classical musicians, a lot of their careers are, sometimes all of their careers, they're interpreting works of the great composers and performing them live. So it's part of a musical tradition. But in terms of being creative, I think it's very important to find what you authentically bring to the table. What's your talent? what fits your personality, and what can you do that's original. I guess that's fairly cliched advice and quite odd advice coming from an impersonator, but all of it is to say that I'm doing Elton's music, I'm performing Elton's music live because of an authentic personal connection with it. And I'm not seeing this as something forever. This is a project, as I said, to celebrate Elton's legacy and the legacy of Nigel and David Johnston and all the people in his band, by playing the songs authentically, like the way the Elton John band do. And then also taking this whole experience to meet Elton John fans and other wonderful people in America, and go and do something myself, that's original and artistic and creative. And I think that's what Elton himself would want. So, the best, to distill it all into one piece of advice, I'd say be yourself and be original.
Well done. And since this is a retro show, do you happen to have a favorite retro product?
Oh, a retro product. I don't know whether a single product. But I mean, retro culture and retro restaurants and retro hotels and the past is something that I'm very fascinated by, and I love old school stuff. So my mother's Portuguese and my wife's mother is Italian. Those two countries are very, very old school and old fashioned, and so if I was to suggest anything retro that I particularly like, it's spending time in Portugal and Italy, and going and admiring the huge wealth of history that exists over there. But if I had to name a single retro material possession, I guess it would be my newly acquired Elton John suit that he himself wore. That's probably the best way of answering that question.
Good one. Good one. Well, Tom, thank you again for joining today's interview.
Ben, thank you very much for having me on.